Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum. In the 11th segment of our serialized presentation, we shall discuss the following today. First of all, exit Congress, the ascendant Muslim League towards the finalization or the summit of the journey towards Pakistan resolution. The Pakistan resolution itself, despondent Congress after that, and defiant Muslim League. These were critical times because the world was at war. So we come to the first part, exit Congress, ascendant League towards the Pakistan resolution. Congress ministries, my dear viewers, had begun to run into difficulties as the governors in some provinces were not prepared to fall in line with the spirit of the Government of India Act 1935. On 22nd October 1939, the Congress resigned and Section 93 of the Act was imposed, under which the assemblies were suspended. Jinnah issued an appeal to the Muslims of India to observe 22nd December as the day of deliverance and Thanksgiving as a mark of relief that the Congress regime had at last ceased to function. His instructions were carried out enthusiastically by the Muslims all over India. Gandhi was pained and wrote an article in his weekly, The Harijan. He sent a copy of it to the Quaid and asked him to comment on it. Jinnah wrote to Gandhi on 1st January 1940, saying Gandhi was being dictated by his inner voice and not by practical politics. Jinnah also said, India is a subcontinent composed of nationalities, Hindus and Muslims being the two major nations. You cannot divide social, economic, political and purely religious work into watertight compartments. I do not know any religion apart from human activity. In an atmosphere charged with communal tension and open antagonism between the League and the Congress, the annual session of the League met in Lahore on 22nd March 1940. The province was still in the grip of Unionists, but by far and large, mass public opinion had veered round to the League's point of view. Jinnah's decades of active political life had gradually made him come to the conclusion that unity meant one thing to him and those of his way of thinking, and it meant quite another thing to the Hindu Congress. He wanted it to be a means of achieving an honored peace for his co-religionists, while the Hindus wanted to use it to perpetuate their stranglehold on the politics of the country. Muslim leadership, my dear viewers, had been disillusioned about Congress intentions after seeing Congress ministries in action, which convinced them when you scratch a congressman, you find a Hindu underneath. The Quaid realized that the Muslims now stood at the crossroads of history and they must take a decision worthy of Muslims as a nation. There had been unchannelized talk recently about Pakistan, a homeland for the Muslims of India. Could Muslims live an honored life as a nation within a unified India, where majority Hindu rule would prevail, both in the center and in the provinces? Congress ministries had provided the answer to this question. Therefore, the thinking of the Quaid and his colleagues abandoned the beaten track and headed for a new and bold path to vehemently assert and demand that Muslims were a separate nation and their national aspirations had to be met. In the background of this fully matured thought, leaders of the Muslim League sat to draft a resolution which would unambiguously set before Muslims their political goal. The main resolution to be moved in the Lahore session began to take shape. They were ready to take the plunge with firm faith and confidence on the path that would lead them to securing a separate homeland for the Muslims of India. The Quaid, my dear viewers, rose to deliver his presidential address. It was not a set speech read from a prepared text. He prefaced his speech by narrating what had been achieved since the last session had met at Patna. In every province, branches of the League had been opened. Almost all the by-elections had been won by the League. A ladies' section of the League had been organized. He dwelt on the anti-Muslim rule of Congress ministries and said, "We have learnt many lessons. We are now therefore very apprehensive and can trust nobody. I never dreamt that the Congress would come down so low as that." He recalled that it was for the first time that the Viceroy of India had thought of inviting him for consultations along with Gandhi. What was responsible for this change in the mind of the Viceroy, he asked. The answer is, he firmly said, the All India Muslim League, whose president I happen to be. He said it has always been taken for granted, mistakenly, that Muslims are a minority. And of course, we have got used to it for such a long time that those settled notions sometimes are very difficult to move. The Muslims are not a minority. The Muslims are a nation by any definition. We occupy large parts of this country where the Muslims are in a majority, such as Bengal, the Punjab, the northwest frontier province, Sindh and Balochistan. The problem in India is not of an inter-communal character, but manifestly of an international character, and it must be treated as such. If the British government are really in earnest and sincere to secure peace and happiness of the people of this subcontinent, the only course open to us all is to allow major nations separate homelands by dividing India into autonomous national states. To yoke together two such nations, that is Hindus and Muslims, under a single state, one as a numerical minority and the other as a majority, must lead to growing discontent and final destruction of any fabric that may be so built up for the government of such a state. Muslim India cannot accept any constitution which must result in Hindu majority government. In that, my dear viewers, he made an impassioned appeal to the intelligentsia. Do you realize that you cannot get freedom or independence by mere arguments? I should appeal to the intelligentsia. The intelligentsia in all countries have been pioneers in all movements for freedom. What does the Muslim intelligentsia propose to do? He exhorted them to roll up their sleeves and to work for the betterment of the Muslim nation. Quaid Azam further said, the Hindus and Muslims belong to two different religious philosophies, social customs, literatures. They neither intermarry nor interdine together, and indeed, they belong to two different civilizations which are based mainly on conflicting ideas and conceptions. Their concepts on life and of life are different. It is quite clear that Hindus and Muslims derive their inspiration from different sources of history. They have different epics, different heroes, and different episodes. Very often the hero of one is a foe of the other, and likewise their victories and defeats overlap. To yoke together two such nations under a single state, one as a numerical minority and the other as a majority, must lead to growing discontent and final destruction of any fabric that may be so built up for the government of such a state. Muslims are a nation according to any definition of a nation. and they must have their homelands, their territory, and their state. We wish to live in peace and harmony with our neighbors as a free and independent people. Wish our people develop to the fullest our spiritual, cultural, economic, social, and political life in a way that we think best and in consonance with our own ideals and according to the genius of our people. Coming next after these glorious words of the Quaid Azam to the Pakistan resolution, my dear viewers, when the mind of the audience had thus been prepared, the main resolution of the session was introduced by Maulvi Fazlul Haq. It was resolved that it is the considered view of the session of the All India Muslim League that no constitutional plan would be workable in this country or acceptable to the Muslims unless it is designed on the following basic principles, that is, that geographically contiguous units are demarcated into regions which should be so constituted with such territorial readjustments as may be necessary that the areas in which the Muslims are numerically in a majority, as in the northwestern and eastern zones of India, should be grouped to constitute independent states in which the constituent units shall be autonomous and sovereign. The last paragraph of the resolution, which underlined the fact that the separation demanded was to be complete and final, read as under, my dear viewers. This session further authorizes the working committee to frame a scheme of constitution in accordance with these basic principles, providing for the assumption finally by the respective regions of all powers such as defense, external affairs, communications, customs, and such other matters as may be necessary. The adequate, effective, and mandatory safeguards should be specifically provided in the Constitution for minorities in these units and in the regions for the protection of their religious, cultural, economic, political, administrative, and other rights and interests in consultation with them and in other parts of India where the Muslims are in a minority. Adequate, effective, and mandatory safeguards shall be specifically provided in the Constitution for them and other minorities for the protection of their religious, cultural, economic, political, administrative, and other rights and interests in consultation with them. This session further authorizes the working committee to frame a scheme of constitution in accordance with these basic principles, providing for the assumption finally by the respective regions of all powers such as defense, external affairs, communications, customs, and such other matters as may be necessary. The resolution, my dear viewers, was seconded by Chaudhry Khaliqur Zaman and supported among others by Maulana Zafar Ali Khan, Sardar Aurangzeb Khan, Haji Sir Abdullah Haroon, Nawab Ismail Khan, Qazi Muhammad Isa, and I. Chundrigar. The resolution passed in Lahore on 23rd March created a scare in the minds of the Hindus and the Congress. They could read in between the lines and they were sure that the Muslim League had now openly advocated the division of India into independent states. They were furious. Editorial after editorial in the Hindu press condemned it. Hindu leaders fulminated at it. Ridicule was showered on it. And the Quaid was the main target of their attack. But he remained restrained, dignified, happy that the Muslims were now well set towards their destiny. The Hindus, with a view to damn the resolution, contemptuously called it the resolution that demanded Pakistan, an impossible goal which only a madman could believe in. The Muslim League relished the accusation and named it the Pakistan Resolution of 23rd March 1940. The Quaid told his secretary, Mr. Syed, after the passing of the resolution, Iqbal is no more among us. But had he been alive, he would have been happy to know that we did exactly what he wanted us to do. Despondent Congress and defiant League, Gandhi and Raja Gopalacharya said the Lahore resolution was aimed at the vivisection of India and at cutting the body into two halves. Jinnah replied, India is divided and partitioned by nature. Where is the country which is being divided? Where is the nation which is denationalized? Indian nation and central government do not exist. The Muslim demand for Pakistan became more and more vocal and the League better organized. In April 1942, Mr. Leo Amery, as Secretary of State for India, was constrained to admit in the House of Commons, our ideal remains a united India, but we would sooner see India divided and free than keep her various elements forever chafing against us and against each other under a sense of impotent frustration. 2 years later, Mr. Gandhi wrote to Jinnah that Muslims and Hindus were not two nations, but one. He wrote that Jinnah's contention was wholly unreal. I find no parallel in history for a body of converts and their descendants claiming to be a nation apart from the parent stock. Jinnah replied, Muslims and Hindus are two major nations by any definition, at test as a nation. By all the canons of international law, Muslims are a nation. Ever since the Pakistan resolution was passed, my dear viewers, demands were made in the press that Jinnah should explain the details and implications of the scheme embodied in the resolution. The Quaid refused to oblige his adversaries. His contention was that the principle of separation must first be accepted, and then the time would come for deciding on the details. In 1943, Beverly Nichols came to visit India and to meet Indian leaders in connection with a book that he was writing. After meeting all of them, he wrote, I have called Mr. Jinnah the most important man in Asia. Beverly Nichols asked the Quaid how he would describe the vital principles of Pakistan in 5 words. Replied the Quaid, the Muslims are a nation. He went on to say, the one thing which keeps the British in India is a false idea of a united India, as preached by Gandhi. A united India, I repeat, is a British creation, a myth which will cause endless strife. Nichols asked him if he wanted the British to divide and quit. Jinnah replied, you have put it very neatly. Critical times, world at war. In the first quarter of 1940, the fortunes of war were going heavily against the Allies as the hordes of Hitler and Mussolini had brought a large portion of Europe under the iron heels of the Rome-Berlin axis. France, the last bastion of democracy on the European continent, was on the verge of collapse until it fell in June as a conquered territory before the onslaught of Nazi armies. British expeditionary forces suffered the ignominy of hasty withdrawal from Dunkirk. As a safety measure to ensure effective governance of the Eastern Empire, there was a feeling of foreboding about future events in India, and Congress ministries that had resigned earlier showed the signs, rather no signs of resuming office. Gandhi, however, said that Congress did not seek our independence out of Britain's ruin. And Jawaharlal, while condemning the fascist dictators, said England's difficulty was not India's opportunity. Jinnah, in his capacity as president of the League, issued a statement to the press. Up to the present moment, we have not created any difficulty, nor have we embarrassed the British government in the prosecution of the war. The provinces where Muslim League has a dominant voice have been left free to cooperate with the British government, pending their consideration with regard to the assurances we have asked for. Working Committee of the League endorsed this statement by a resolution in Bombay on 17th June 1940. The resolution, however, said the grave world situation demands serious efforts on the part of every Indian for the defense of his country. Unless a satisfactory basis for close cooperation is agreed upon, an all-India basis between the government and the Muslim League and such other parties as are willing to undertake responsibility for the defense of the country in the face of imminent danger, the real purpose and objective will not be served and achieved. The Viceroy, armed with additional powers, surveyed the situation and was convinced that although the Congress would not accept office, they would not hamper the war efforts. The Muslim League also would not create any difficulties in regard to the war. The Viceroy was firmly of the opinion that although the Muslims were to run provincial governments, and the Muslims constituted over 60% of the Indian army, yet it was not the right time to present an opportunity to Indian leaders and parties for political quarrels and wranglings. As a result of this correspondence, the Viceroy was instructed to hold prior consultations with Jinnah, Gandhi, and other political leaders. The Working Committee of the League, having authorized their president to meet the Viceroy, the Quaid met the Viceroy on 27th June and Gandhi did the same on the 29th. Jinnah informed the Viceroy that the League was prepared to help, but they could do so only if they were associated actively in provincial and central cabinets. He left the Viceroy in no doubt and demanded that future constitutional reforms in India should be solely on the basis of two independent and sovereign states. After the interview, the Quaid repeated this demand in a written memorandum he sent to the Viceroy, saying no settlement should prejudice the two-nation theory, which had become the universal faith of the Muslims of India. He further insisted that no interim or final settlement should be arrived at without the prior consent and approval of the Muslim League. Maulana Azad sent a cable to Jinnah to inquire about certain policies of Muslim League. The Quaid replied to Azad, "I refuse to discuss with you by correspondence or otherwise, as you have completely forfeited the confidence of Muslim India. Can you not realize you are made a Muslim showboy by Congress President to give it color that it is national and deceive foreign countries? You represent neither Muslims nor Hindus. The Congress is a Hindu body. If you have self-respect, resign at once." After this, Azad was commonly referred to as the Congress showboy in innumerable meetings held by the League all over India. Finally, my dear viewers of this particular segment, I feel that now we are gradually moving towards that part of our history where the outline of Pakistan as an independent state would have been etched on every mind and every visual that people had in their heads be they Hindus, Sikhs, the British, and of course the Muslims, carried this dream along at all times, wherever they were and wherever they went. Thank you very much, and let's hope that we will enjoy the next part of our presentation even more. Thank you very much.
यही है